This conversation is powered by Google Illuminate. Check out illuminate.google.com for more. Wow. Code on Social Security, Central Rules, 2020. That's a mouthful. Sounds pretty serious. But what's the real-world impact?
It's a big update to worker protections in India. Think of it as a massive overhaul of labor laws.
A complete rewrite. So what's changed? Is it better for workers?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It aims to be with broader coverage and clearer rules.
Broader coverage? Like who's included now that wasn't before?
It covers a wider range of workers, including gig and platform workers, think Uber drivers, food delivery people, who often miss out on traditional protections.
So the gig economy is finally getting some attention? About time? What about existing workers?
Existing rules for things like employee state insurance and prominent funds are streamlined and updated under this new code.
Streamlined, you say? Less paperwork?
The goal is simpler processes, more digitalization through the Shram Suvida portal. Think online registration, fewer forms. Yeah.
Sounds like a win for efficiency. But what about the actual benefits? Are they better?
The rules detail benefits like sickness, maternity, and disablement benefits with clearer eligibility criteria and payment procedures.
So how are these benefits funded? Is it all coming from the government?
There are multiple funds involved, including the Employees State Insurance Fund and the Employees Provident Fund. Contributions can come from both employers and employees.
And who manages all this money? Is it a big bureaucratic mess?
There are various boards and committees: Central Board, Employees State Insurance Corporation, National Social Security boards to oversee the funds and ensure proper administration. It's a bit complex, yeah.
Sounds complicated. How do they make sure employers follow the rules?
There are provisions for inspections, penalties for non-compliance, and appeals processes if employers or employees disagree with decisions.
So there's a system of checks and balances. What happens if an employer breaks the rules?
Penalties can be imposed, and there are clear procedures for resolving disputes through appeals to higher authorities.
What about maternity benefits? Are there any significant changes there?
Yes, the rules specify the duration of maternity leave, the rate of pay, and other related benefits, with a focus on protecting women workers.
So it's not just about the leave itself, but also ensuring fair compensation?
Exactly. It also addresses issues like creche facilities and protection against unfair dismissal during pregnancy.
And what about those gig workers we talked about? How does the code protect them?
The code establishes a registration process for gig and platform workers, allowing them to access Social Security benefits.
So they're finally included in the system. How does the contribution work for them?
The contribution mechanism is different for gig workers, often involving aggregators who contribute on their behalf. Right.
What about building and construction workers? They often face precarious conditions.
The code addresses this by establishing a cess system, where a levy is imposed on construction projects to fund welfare schemes for these workers.
So it's a way to ensure that the industry itself contributes to worker protection?
Precisely. It also outlines procedures for collecting and managing the cess, along with assessment and appeal mechanisms.
And what about the broader category of unorganized workers? That's a huge group.
The code aims to bring more unorganized workers into the Social Security net through a self-registration process using Aadhaar.
So it's making it easier for them to register and access benefits? What about data privacy?
The rules emphasize the importance of data privacy and security, ensuring that personal information is handled responsibly.
This all sounds very detailed. Are there specific forms and procedures to follow?
Absolutely. The rules include numerous forms for various applications, appeals, and reporting requirements. Many processes are designed to be digital.
So it's a pretty comprehensive document with a lot of detail. Anything else we should highlight?
The code aims to create a more equitable and protective environment for workers in India, addressing the challenges of the modern economy. It's a significant step, but its success will depend on effective implementation.
So it's a big step forward, but there's still work to be done to ensure it's actually effective on the ground. It's a complex system.
It's a landmark piece of legislation aiming to improve the lives of millions of workers. Its success will depend on how well it's implemented and enforced.
It's a huge undertaking, and it will be interesting to see how it plays out in practice. Thanks for breaking it down for us. That was a great discussion.
This conversation is powered by Google Illuminate. Check out illuminate.google.com for more. Today's discussion delves into the recently published Code on Social Security, Central Rules 2020. These rules are a significant overhaul of existing Social Security regulations in India. What immediately strikes you as the most impactful change?
The sheer scope of the consolidation is remarkable. These rules bring together 9 previously disparate sets of regulations, streamlining administration, and hopefully improving access to benefits for workers.
Exactly. It's a monumental task. But the devil's in the details, isn't it? What are some of the key areas these rules address?
Absolutely. We're looking at significant changes in the administration of funds for provident funds, employee state insurance, and the Social Security Board for unorganized workers, gig workers, and platform workers.
And how will these changes affect the everyday lives of workers?
The aim is to simplify processes, making it easier for workers to access benefits and for employers to comply with regulations. This includes things like online registration and streamlined claim processes.
Let's start with the Central Board for Employees' Provident Funds. The rules detail the administration of funds, including the establishment of an executive committee. What's the significance of this committee structure?
The Executive Committee is designed to assist the Central Board in its administrative tasks, ensuring efficient management of the vast resources involved. The composition, with representatives from employers and employers, aims for balanced decision-making.
The rules also specify the term of office for board members and committee members. Why is this level of detail important?
It ensures transparency and accountability. Clearly defined terms prevent indefinite tenure and promote regular rotation of members, bringing in fresh perspectives and preventing potential conflicts of interest.
Moving on to the Employees State Insurance Corporation, E6. The rules outline the representation of states, the constitution of a standing committee, and the roles of various subcommittees. How does this structure promote effective governance?
The structure ensures both national and regional representation, balancing the needs of different states with national policy objectives. The standing committee and subcommittees allow for focused attention on specific areas like medical benefits.
The rules also address the corporation's investment policies and the management of its assets. What are the key considerations here?
Prudent investment and responsible management of funds are crucial for the long-term sustainability of the ESIC. The rules provide a framework for this, ensuring transparency and accountability in financial matters.
The National Social Security Board plays a crucial role in extending Social Security to unorganized workers, gig workers, and platform workers. The rules detail the board's composition and functions. What are the challenges in covering this diverse workforce?
The unorganized sector is incredibly diverse, with workers often lacking formal employment contracts or consistent income. The board's structure, with representatives from various stakeholders, aims to address these challenges and ensure equitable coverage.
The rules also address the issue of filling vacancies on the board. Why is this process so important?
A well-defined process for filling vacancies ensures continuity and prevents disruptions in the board's functioning. It also allows for the inclusion of diverse perspectives and expertise.
The rules include general provisions covering meetings of the various boards and committees, quorum requirements, and allowances for members. Why is it important to have clear procedures for these aspects?
Clear procedures ensure transparency and efficiency in decision-making. They also prevent potential conflicts of interest and ensure that meetings are conducted in a fair and equitable manner. The specified allowances are important for attracting qualified individuals to serve on these boards.
Let's revisit the Employees' Provident Fund. The rules outline the process for appeals against tribunal decisions. What are the key features of this appeals process?
The appeals process is designed to be fair and efficient, with clear timelines and procedures. It allows for the review of tribunal decisions, ensuring that workers have access to justice. The rules also specify the required documentation and fees, promoting transparency.
Turning back to ESIC, the rules detail the various benefits available to insured persons, including sickness benefits, maternity benefits, and disablement benefits. What are the key considerations in determining eligibility and benefit amounts?
Eligibility is based on contribution periods, ensuring that benefits are linked to contributions made. Benefit amounts are calculated based on average daily wages, providing a fair and equitable system. The rules also address specific situations such as extended sickness benefits or maternity benefits in case of miscarriage.
The rules also address the collection and administration of cess for building and other construction workers. What are the key challenges in this area?
The construction sector is often characterized by informal employment and high worker mobility. The rules aim to address these challenges by establishing a clear system for cess collection and ensuring that the funds are used effectively for the benefit of workers. The self-assessment process is designed to simplify compliance for employers.
The rules establish a system for registering unorganized workers, gig workers, and platform workers, and for collecting contributions from aggregators. What are the unique challenges in covering this segment of the workforce?
This segment of the workforce is characterized by its informality and diversity. The rules aim to address these challenges by providing a streamlined registration process and a system for collecting contributions from aggregators, ensuring that these workers are not left behind.
The rules also address the financial management of the various Social Security organizations, including investment policies, accounting procedures, and the writing off of irrecoverable dues. What are the key principles guiding these provisions?
Transparency, accountability, and prudent financial management are paramount. The rules provide a framework for ensuring that funds are invested wisely and used effectively for the benefit of workers. The process for writing off irrecoverable dues is designed to prevent unnecessary losses.
The rules also define offenses and penalties for non-compliance. What is the purpose of this section?
This section aims to deter non-compliance and ensure that employers fulfill their obligations under the code. The rules provide a clear framework for enforcing the regulations, promoting compliance, and protecting workers' rights. The provision for compounding of offenses offers a path to resolution without resorting to lengthy legal proceedings.
The rules establish a system for employment information and monitoring, including the establishment of career centers. What is the role of these centers?
Career centers play a vital role in connecting job seekers with employers, providing vocational guidance, and monitoring employment trends. The rules outline the functions of these centers and the process for reporting vacancies, promoting efficient labor market functioning.
These rules represent a significant step towards modernizing India's social security system. What are your overall thoughts on their potential impact?
These rules have the potential to significantly improve the lives of millions of Indian workers by simplifying access to benefits and promoting compliance. However, successful implementation will require effective administration and ongoing monitoring.
That was a great discussion. Thank you for your insights. This conversation is powered by Google Illuminate. Check out illuminate.google.com for more. Welcome to today's discussion. We'll be delving into the recently released Code on Social Security Central Rules 2020, a significant piece of legislation impacting various aspects of Social Security in India. These rules are quite extensive, covering numerous chapters and regulations. What are some of the key areas addressed in these rules?
These rules aim to consolidate and streamline various Social Security laws in India. Key areas include the administration of funds for employees' provident funds and the Employees' State Insurance Corporation, ESIC, the establishment and functioning of Social Security boards for unorganized gig and platform workers, and provisions for maternity benefits. They also detail procedures for appeals, penalties, and the collection of cess for building and other construction workers.
That's a broad scope. Let's start with the administration of funds. How do these rules differ from previous regulations in this area?
The rules introduce a more centralized and streamlined approach to fund management. They specify how funds are to be invested, managed, and audited, aiming for greater transparency and efficiency compared to the previous, more fragmented system.
The rules also establish Social Security boards for different worker categories. What's the purpose of these boards and how are they structured?
These boards are designed to represent the interests of unorganized, gig, and platform workers, ensuring their Social Security needs are addressed. The rules outline the composition and functions of these boards, including member nominations and terms of office.
Maternity benefits are another crucial aspect. What are the key changes or clarifications provided in these rules regarding maternity leave and benefits?
The rules clarify the eligibility criteria for maternity benefits, the duration of leave, and the payment procedures. They also address issues like confinement expenses, nursing breaks, and the provision of crutches. There's a focus on ensuring women employees receive their entitlements without facing discrimination.
The rules also cover the collection of cess for building and other construction workers. Can you explain the process and the implications for employers?
Employers involved in building and other construction work are required to pay a cess. The rules detail the self-assessment process, the payment procedures, and the mechanisms for appeals and penalties in case of non-compliance. This aims to ensure a dedicated fund for the welfare of construction workers.
What are some of the key procedural aspects outlined in the rules, such as appeals and dispute resolution?
The rules establish clear procedures for file appeals against decisions related to various benefits and cess payments. They specify the forms, time limits, and authorities involved in the appeal process, aiming to provide a fair and efficient mechanism for resolving disputes.
The rules seem to emphasize electronic filing and digital processes. What's the rationale behind this digitalization push?
The digitalization aims to improve transparency, efficiency, and accessibility. Electronic filing and online portals streamline processes, reduce paperwork, and make information readily available to both employers and employees.
What are some of the potential challenges in implementing these new rules, and how can these be addressed?
Implementation challenges could include ensuring widespread awareness among employers and workers, particularly in the unorganized sector, and establishing robust digital infrastructure to support electronic processes. Effective training and outreach programs, along with technical support, will be crucial for successful implementation.
The rules seem to have a strong focus on ensuring compliance. What mechanisms are in place to ensure that employers adhere to these regulations?
The rules provide for regular inspections, penalties for non-compliance, and mechanisms for filing complaints and appeals. The emphasis on electronic record keeping also aids in monitoring compliance.
How do these rules contribute to the overall goal of improving Social Security in India?
By consolidating and streamlining existing laws, these rules aim to create a more comprehensive and efficient Social Security system. The focus on digitalization and clear procedures should improve accessibility and reduce delays in benefit delivery. The establishment of dedicated boards for different worker categories ensures their specific needs are addressed.
Are there any provisions for flexibility or adaptation to specific circumstances in the implementation of these rules?
Yes, the rules allow for some flexibility. The central government can issue guidelines and notifications to address specific situations or exceptional circumstances. This allows for adaptation to regional variations and evolving needs.
What are some of the long-term implications of these rules for the Indian workforce?
The long-term implications are positive. A more streamlined and efficient Social Security system should provide better protection and benefits to a wider range of workers, including those in the unorganized sector. This can contribute to improved worker welfare, reduced inequality, and overall economic development.
This has been a very informative discussion on the Code on Social Security, Central Rules 2020. Thank you for your insights.
This conversation is powered by Google Illuminate. Check out illuminate.google.com for more. So we're diving into a pretty hefty document today, the Code on Social Security, Central Rules 2020. It's a dense read, I'll be honest, but it's packed with implications for workers' rights and benefits all across India.
Yeah, it is. It's a significant piece of legislation, for sure. It aims to consolidate and streamline various Social Security laws, but the sheer volume is daunting, to say the least.
Daunting is a huge understatement. It's like a legal labyrinth, but, with potentially life-changing rewards if you can successfully navigate it.
Exactly. And the rules themselves are pretty complex. They cover everything from provident funds to maternity benefits. It's a lot.
So let's try to unravel this legal Gordian knot, one chapter at a time. Ready? Chapter 1, it lays the groundwork, defining terms and setting the stage. It's all about establishing the scope and when these rules come into effect.
Right. And the definition section is crucial. Terms like agency, appellate authority, and contribution period, they're all precisely defined to avoid any ambiguity. That's key for consistent application of the law.
Absolutely. Clear definitions prevent disputes later on and ensure fairness, It's like having a really good map before you start a long journey.
Yeah, precisely. Ambiguity in legal language can create a lot of unnecessary complications.
Chapters 3 and IV, they deal with how these rules apply to different workplaces. There's a process for seeking exemptions, but it's not exactly easy.
That's right. Establishments can apply for exemptions, but they have to meet specific criteria. Things like having a certain number of employees and a positive net worth. And there's a 60-day decision period.
60 days to decide if you're exempt? Wow, that's a long time to wait, especially for businesses. It's like waiting for a delayed flight, A really long delay.
It is, and the rules also say that you can apply for exemptions before 5 years of coverage. That's to ensure stability.
That makes sense. It's about balancing flexibility with stability, I guess. Chapter 2 dives into the structure and functions of various Social Security organizations, like the Central Board for Employees' Provident Funds and the Employees' State Insurance Corporation.
These sections detail the composition, powers, and duties of these boards, including their committees and how members are elected. It's all about governance and accountability.
Accountability is really key. It's like having a well-oiled machine, ensuring smooth functioning and transparency.
Precisely. The rules outline clear procedures for meetings, decision-making, and financial management.
Chapters 3 and IV also cover employee benefits like sickness, maternity, and disability benefits. The rules detail eligibility, payment procedures, and how to appeal decisions.
These are the core of the code, really. They specify the rates, periods, and conditions for various benefits, making sure workers get the support they need.
It's a complex system, but it's designed to be fair and comprehensive. It's like a safety net, catching workers when they need it most.
Right. The rules also address things like calculating average daily wages and extending sickness benefits under certain conditions.
Chapter 5 is all about gratuity, outlining how to claim and receive gratuity payments. It's a significant benefit for many workers.
The rules specify time limits for filing applications, the forms you need, and procedures for resolving disputes. It's all about ensuring timely and fair payments.
Timely payments are crucial. It's like getting your paycheck on time, always appreciated.
Absolutely. The rules also cover nominations and what happens if the employee or nominee passes away.
Chapter 6 deals with maternity benefits, a really crucial aspect of Social Security for women workers. It covers leave, medical expenses, and protection against discrimination.
This chapter is particularly important, making sure women workers aren't disadvantaged during pregnancy and childbirth. It includes provisions for creches and nursing breaks.
It's about creating a supportive environment for working mothers. It's like providing a safe haven for both mother and child.
The rules also detail procedures for filing complaints and appeals if there are disputes.
Chapter 8 addresses Social Security and cess for building and other construction workers. It's a significant sector with its own unique challenges.
This chapter outlines the collection and administration of cess, the assessment process, and procedures for appeals and exemptions. It's about making sure these workers are protected too.
It's about extending Social Security to a segment of the workforce that's often overlooked. It's like building a stronger foundation for the whole construction industry.
The rules also address things like calculating construction costs and recovering overdue amounts.
Chapter 8 focuses on Social Security for unorganized, gig, and platform workers, a rapidly growing part of the Indian workforce.
This is a really forward-looking chapter, recognizing the unique needs of these workers. It outlines registration procedures, contribution mechanisms, and benefit structures.
It's about adapting Social Security to the changing nature of work. It's like building a bridge to the future of work.
The rules also address the role of aggregators in collecting and remitting contributions.
Chapter 9 deals with the financial and accounting procedures of the various Social Security organizations. It's all about transparency and accountability.
This chapter outlines the rules for investment, raising loans, and writing off irrecoverable dues. It's about responsible financial management.
Responsible financial management is essential for the long-term sustainability of these schemes. It's like having a well-managed budget for a household.
Chapter X covers offenses and penalties, ensuring compliance with the code. It's about deterring violations and protecting workers' rights.
Chapter 12 focuses on employment information and monitoring, highlighting the role of career centers in facilitating employment.
This chapter outlines procedures for reporting vacancies, maintaining records, and submitting returns. It's about improving the efficiency of the employment market.
Efficient employment markets benefit both employers and job seekers. It's like a well-oiled machine, matching skills with opportunities.
The rules also specify the responsibilities of career centers and the penalties for non-compliance.
Chapter 13 covers miscellaneous provisions, including the establishment and administration of the Social Security Fund and the process for seeking exemptions from certain provisions of the code.
This chapter ties up loose ends, addressing various administrative and procedural matters. It's like the final touches on a well-crafted piece of legislation.
It's about ensuring that the whole system functions smoothly and effectively.
So overall, the Code on Social Security Central Rules 2020 is a comprehensive and ambitious piece of legislation aiming to improve the lives of millions of workers across India. But its complexity does require careful study and understanding.
That was a great discussion. Thank you.
The Code on Wages, 2019 FAQs on the Code on Wages, 2019-1 How many exiting acts have been subsumed under the Code on Wages, 2019 and what are those? Hands 4 acts namely, Payment of Wages Act, 1936, Minimum Wages Act, 1948, Payment of Bonus Act, 1965 and the Equal Remuneration Act, 1976. 2. What are the fundamental reforms introduced under the Code on Wages, 2019? ANS. The fundamental reforms introduced under the Code on Wages, 2019 include universalizes provisions of minimum wages and timely payment of wages, removes multiplicity of definitions and authorities, changes the role of inspector to inspector cum facilitator. Q3. Does the Code on Wages, 2019 retain the concept of scheduled employment? Ans. No. 4. Whether the persons doing the supervisory, managerial and administrative work in an establishment are covered within the definition of employee as defined under the Code on Wages, 2019? Ans. Yes. Q5. Who is an employer in relation to an establishment, which is a factory as per the provisions of Code on Wages, 2019? Ans. The occupier of the factory, and where a person has been named as a manager of the factory, the person so named, as per the relevant provisions of the Factories Act, 1948. Q6. Does the Code on Wages, 2019 permit allow discrimination in an establishment, or any unit thereof among the employees on the grounds of gender and matters relating to wages by the same employer in respect of the same or similar nature of work done by an employee? Ans. No. Q7. What is meant by same work or work of a similar nature in the context of Code on Wages, 2019? Ans. Same work or work of a similar nature means the work in respect of which the skill, effort, experience and responsibility required are the same, when performed under similar working conditions by employees, and the differences, if any, are not of practical importance in relation to the terms and conditions of employment. Q8. What are the two methods for fixation or revision of minimum rates of wages under the Code on Wages, 2019? Ans. I. Appointment of as many committees as deemed fit by the appropriate government to hold inquiry and make recommendations. 2. Publication of notification of its proposals for the information of the persons likely to be affected by such notification. Q9. What are the components included in the definition of wages as per the Code on Wages, 2019? Ans. The components included in the definition of wages as per the Code on Wages, 2019 are basic pay, dearness allowance, and retaining allowance, if any. Q10. Does the Code on Wages, 2019, provide for fixation of floor wage by the central government, and what purpose does it serve? Ans. Yes, the Code on Wages, 2019 provides for the same. As per Section 9(1) of the Code, the power for the same has been given to the central government, which has to take into account minimum living standards of a worker in the manner as prescribed in different floor wage may be fixed for different geographical areas. Section 9(2) of the Code provides that the minimum rates of wages fixed by the appropriate government under Section 6 of the Code shall not be less than the floor wage fixed by the central government. Q11. What is the rate of payment of wages for the overtime work put in by an employee whose minimum rate of wages has been fixed under the Code on Wages, 2019 by the hour, by the day of, by such a longer wage period as may be prescribed? Ans. Not less than twice the normal rate of wages. Section 14 of the Code on Wages, 2019. Q12. What are the different wage periods under the Code on Wages, 2019, in case of the employees working on time work basis? Ans. In case of the employees working on time work basis, there are 4 possible wage periods, i.e. daily, 2 weekly, 3 fortnightly, and 5 monthly, subject to the condition that no wage period in respect of an employee shall be more than a month. Q13. What is the time limit for payment of wages in normal situations in respect of the employees working on time work basis as per the Code on Wages, 2019? Ans. The time limit is as follows. The payment to the employees working on daily basis has to be made at the end of the shift. The payment to the employees working on weekly basis has to be made on the last working day of week, that is to say, before the weekly holiday. The payment to the employees working on fortnightly basis has to be made before the end of the second day after the end of the fortnight. The payment to the employees working on monthly basis has to be made before the expiry of the 7th day of the succeeding month. Further, where an employee has been removed or dismissed from service, or retrenched, or has resigned from service, or become unemployed due to closure of the establishment, the wages payable to him shall be paid within 2 working days of his removal, dismissal, retrenchment, or, as the case may be, his resignation. 14. What is the time limit set under the Code on Wages to determine the claim by the authority? Ans. 3 months. 15. What is the compensation which can be awarded by the claim authority under the Code on Wages, 2019? In addition to the claim determined by the authority in case of payment of less than the notified minimum wage under the Code. Ans. Up to 10 times of the determined claim. 16. What is the amount of maximum fine that can be imposed on the employer for paying less than the due wages for the first time, as per the Code on Wages? Ans 50,000 rupees. 17. As per the Code on Wages 2019, what would be the maximum representation of the independent members in the central and state advisory boards? Ans 1/3 of total members. Q18. What is the maximum penalty that can be imposed on an employer having been convicted of an offense of paying less than the due wages, and again being found guilty of the same offense, within 5 years from the date of the first or subsequent offense? Ans imprisonment extending up to 3 months or fine up to rupees 1 lakh or both. Q19. Which type of offense committed by the employer can be compounded by the gazetted officer as per the Code on Wages 2019? Ans offense punishable with fine only. Q20. What is the amount sum for which the offense committed by the employer can be compounded by the gazetted officer as per the Code on Wages 2019? Ans an amount sum of 50% of the maximum fine provided for such offense.
The Code on Social Security, 2020 FAQs on the Code on Social Security, 2021. How is the concept of Social Security defined under the Code on Social Security, 2020? Ans. Social Security means the measures of protection afforded to employees, inclusive of unorganized workers, gig workers and platform workers to ensure access to healthcare and to provide income security, particularly in cases of old age, unemployment, sickness, invalidity, work injury, maternity or loss of a breadwinner by means of rights conferred on them and schemes framed under the Code on Social Security, 2020. 2. How many legislations does the Code on Social Security, 2020 subsume, amalgamate, and what are those? Ans. The Code on Social Security, 2020 subsumes 9 central labor legislations, i.e., the Employees Compensation Act, 1923, the Employees State Insurance Act, 1948, the Employees Provident Funds and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, 1952, the Employment Exchanges, Compulsory Notification of Vacancies Act, 1959, the Maternity Benefit Act, 1961, the Payment of Gratuity Act, 1972, the Cine Workers Welfare Fund Act, 1981, the Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Cess Act, 1996, and the Unorganized Workers Social Security Act 2008. 3. What is the objective of the Code on Social Security, 2020? Ans. The objective of the Code on Social Security, 2020 is to amend and consolidate the existing labor laws relating to Social Security with the wider goal of extending Social Security benefits to all employees and workers irrespective of belonging to the organized or unorganized sector. The Code on Social Security, 2020 brings, within itself, the self-employed workers, home workers, wage workers, migrant workers, the workers in the unorganized sector, gig workers and platform workers for the purpose of Social Security schemes, including life insurance and disability insurance, health and maternity benefits, Provident Fund. 4. Which are the Social Security institutions envisaged under the Code on Social Security, 2020? Ans. Section 279 of the Code on Social Security, 2020 illustrates on Social Security organizations. It include a. The Central Board of Trustees of Employees Provident Fund constituted under Section 4. B. The Employees State Insurance Corporation constituted under Section 5. C. The National Social Security Board for Unorganized Workers constituted under Section 6. D. The State Unorganized Workers Social Security Board constituted under Section 6. E. The State Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Boards constituted under Section 7. And F. Any other organization or special purpose vehicle declared to be the Social Security organization by the central government. 5. Is there an option to opt out or to opt in regarding coverage of establishments regarding EPF and EC chapters under the Code on Social Security, 2020? Ans. Yes. Central Provident Fund Commissioner CPFC can permit voluntary coverage under Sec 1. 5 of the Code on Social Security, 2020, move-out option is available and Rule 3 procedure is to be followed. Both the situations are based on agreement between employer and majority of employees. A 60 days time limit is provided under the Code on Social Security, 2020 to decide on the same, or else there is a deemed provision. Application is deemed as permitted. Applicable. No such application, opting in opting out, shall be made by the employer of the establishment before 5 years of such coverage under provisions of Chapter 3 of the Code on Social Security, 2020. No such application shall be entertained unless the employer has furnished all statutory returns, paid all statutory dues under the Code on Social Security, 2020 and submitted a self-certification to that effect along with the application. As far as the chapter on EC, Chapter 4, is concerned, application of the same kind is to be decided upon by the Director General of Corporation. Rule 3 applies. Here too, 60 days time limit is provided for decision. Sec 1, 7, and proviso is applicable in this context. 6. Can there be any grounds where an exemption of establishments from the applicability of Chapter 3, EPF, and Chapter IV, ESIC, is entertained under the Code on Social Security, 2020, and, yes, the grounds of exemption are under Section 143. Read with Rule 60 of the Code on Social Security, 2020. Establishment are in receipt of benefits substantially similar or superior to the benefits granted UEC and EPF chapters. B. The establishment seeking exemption shall make an application electronically or otherwise. C. The establishment has been complying with the provisions of Chapter 3 and IV equals for a period of 3 years continuously immediately before making the application and has not defaulted in payment of contribution payable under the respective chapters during such period. D. Have minimum 500 contributory members for the purposes of Chapter 3 and IV of the Code on Social Security, 2020, as the case may be, on the date of such application. E. The establishment seeking exemption from the provisions of the Provident Fund Scheme or the pension scheme should have a cumulative balance in members' account of Rs 50 crore or more in respect of the scheme from which exemption is sought. F. For the purposes EPF, the establishment shall furnish consent of majority of the employees for seeking exemption under Section 143 of the Code on Social Security, 2020. G. The establishment seeking exemption should have a positive net worth during each of the last 3 years before the date of application. H. The establishment must have seeded the Aadhaar number of each of the member in the respective member's account for the purposes of Chapter 3 and Chapter 4, as the case may be, of the Code on Social Security, 2020 in the respective database. I. For the purposes of Chapter 3 of the Code on Social Security, 2020, the establishment shall provide facilities for online claim settlement and has an online portal for grievance resolution to provide linkages with that of employees' Provident Fund organization within 90 days of grant of exemption. 7. Can the provisions and benefits of Chapter 4, EC benefits be made applicable to establishments employing a single employee? And, yes, it can be made applicable to hazardous or life-threatening occupation as notified by the central government, in which even a single employee is employed. 8. What is employees' state insurance society as mentioned in the Code on Social Security, 2020, and the state government may establish such organization as an employees' state insurance society, which shall serve as a managerial and healthcare body, in terms of subsection 5 of Section 40 of the Code on Social Security, 2020. The society shall consist of the governing body, tripartite, the executive committee, the chief executive officer, CEO, and the secretariat. The society shall be registered under the State-Specific Societies Registration Act and the State-Specific Public Trust Act. 9. Which establishments are covered under the chapter on gratuity under the Code on Social Security, 2020, and the chapter on gratuity is applicable to every factory, mine, oil field, plantation, port and railway company, and b. every shop or establishment in which 10 or more employees are employed, or were employed, on any day of the preceding 12 months, and c. such shops or establishments as may be notified by the appropriate government from time to time. 10. What are the situations under which the gratuity eligibility of completion of 5 years of unblemished service can be relaxed under the Code on Social Security, 2020? And there are 3 situations generally to be noted wherein the 5-year period is relaxed. They are a. On the death or disablement of employee due to accident or disease. B. On termination of his contract period under fixed-term employment, pro rata basis. Or C. On happening of any such event as may be notified by the central government. Further, there is special relaxation in case of working journalist as defined in Clause F of Section 2 of the Working Journalist and Other Newspaper Employees, Condition of Service, and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, 1955. Instead of 5 years, it is 3 years that needs to be completed. Q. 11. Which are the kinds of building other construction works that are excluded from the chapter on Social Security aspects under Chapter 9 of the Code on Social Security, 2020, and the excluded works as per Section 2(6) of the Code on Social Security, 2020 are any building or other construction work which is related to any factory or mine or any building or other construction work employing less than 10 workers in the preceding 12 months or where such work is related to own residential purposes of an individual or group of individuals for their own residence and the total cost of such work does not exceed 50 lakhs rupees or such higher amount and employing more than such number of workers as may be notified by the appropriate government. Q. 12. What is the eligibility criteria fixed for building workers under the Code on Social Security, 2020 for registration as beneficiaries and the incidence of cessation as beneficiary, and Section 106 of the Code on Social Security, 2020 discusses about registration of workers. It is done electronically. Registered workers are issued with identity cards making them eligible to receive benefits out of the prescribed schemes notified. It is the responsibility of the state government and the State Building Workers Welfare Board to get the workers registered. As per the code under Section 106, every building worker who has completed 18 years of age, but has not completed 60 years of age, and who has been engaged in any building or other construction work for not less than 90 days during the preceding 12 months shall be registered by the officer authorized by the Building Workers Welfare Board as a beneficiary. Cessation as beneficiary is discussed under Section 107 of the Code on Social Security, 2020. A building worker who has been registered as a beneficiary under the Code on Social Security, 2020 shall cease to be a beneficiary when he attains the age of 60 years or when he is not engaged in building or other construction work for not less than 90 days in a year. Q. 13. Can a building worker who migrates from one state to the another get his benefits under the Code on Social Security, 2020? If yes, from where? And yes, where a building worker migrates from one state to another, he shall be entitled to get benefits from the board in whose jurisdiction as he is currently working, and such board shall be responsible for providing such benefits to such workers. 14. Who is an aggregator? Which all kinds of aggregators are referred to under the 7th schedule attached to the Code on Social Security, 2020, and Section 2(2) of the code defines aggregator as the digital intermediary or a marketplace for a buyer or user of a service to connect with the seller or the service provider. The aggregators listed under Schedule 7 are 1. Ride-sharing services 2. Food and grocery delivery services 3. Logistics services 4. E-marketplace, both marketplace and inventory model. 4. Wholesale retail sale of goods and or services. B2B B2C. 5. Professional services provider 6. Healthcare 7. Travel and hospitality 8. Content and media services 9. Any other goods and services provider platform. 15. Who can amend the schedules attached with the Code on Social Security, 2020 and how? And Section 152(1) of the Code on Social Security, 2020 describes the procedure regarding the same. The central government may, by notification, amend the 1st schedule, 4th schedule, 5th schedule, 6th schedule and 7th schedule by way of addition or deletion therein, and upon such addition or deletion, the schedules shall stand to have been amended accordingly. The appropriate government may, by notification, amend the 2nd schedule and 3rd schedule by way of addition therein and not otherwise, and upon such addition, the schedules shall stand to have been amended accordingly. 16. What is fixed term employment under the Code on Social Security, 2020? Ants. It means the engagement of an employee on the basis of a written contract of employment for a fixed period. The hours of work, wages, allowances and other benefits of a fixed-term employee shall not be less than that of a permanent employee doing the same work or work of a similar nature, and such an employee shall be eligible for all benefits, under any law for the time being in force, available to a permanent employee proportionately according to the period of service rendered by him/her, even if the period of employment does not extend to the required qualifying period of employment, i.e., gratuity eligibility of 5 years of service. 17. Who will be considered as interstate migrant worker under the Code on Social Security, 2020, and Section 241 defines an interstate migrant worker under the Code on Social Security, 2020, and means a person who is employed in an establishment and who I has been recruited directly by the employer or indirectly through contractor in one state for employment in such establishment situated in another state, or 2. has come on his own from one state and obtained employment in an establishment of another state destination state, or has subsequently changed the establishment within the destination state, under an agreement or other arrangement for such employment and drawing wages not exceeding 18,000 rupees per month or such higher amount as may be notified by the central government from time to time. Q. 18. Who is an unorganized worker under the Code on Social Security, 2020, and Section 286 defines an unorganized worker inclusive of a home-based worker, self-employed worker or a wage worker in the unorganized sector, and includes a worker in the organized sector who is not covered by the Industrial Disputes Act, 1947 or Chapters 3, Chapter on EPF, to 7, Chapter on Employees' Compensation, of the Code on Social Security, 2020, Q. 19. Who is a gig worker and platform worker under the Code on Social Security, 2020, and Section 235 of the Code on Social Security, 2020 defines gig worker to mean a person who performs work or participates in a work arrangement and earns from such activities outside of traditional employer-employee relationship. Section 261 of the Code on Social Security, 2020 defines platform worker to mean a person engaged in or undertaking platform work, and Section 260 defines the platform work to mean a work arrangement outside of a traditional employer-employee relationship in which organizations or individuals use an online platform to access other organizations or individuals to solve specific problems or to provide specific services or any such other activities which may be notified by the central government in exchange for payment. Q. 20. What is the procedure envisaged under the Code on Social Security, 2020, to get the registration of unorganized workers, gig workers and platform workers done? And Section 113 of the Code on Social Security, 2020 discusses the same. Rule 50, 1 and 2 provides for the procedure involved in the same. As per these provisions, every unorganized worker, gig worker or platform worker shall be required to be registered for the purposes of Chapter 9, Social Security for unorganized workers, gig workers and platform workers, subject to the fulfillment of the following conditions, namely, a. He has completed 16 years of age or such age as may be prescribed by the central government. B. He has submitted a self-declaration electronically or otherwise in such form and in such manner containing such information as may be prescribed by the central government. Every eligible unorganized worker, Gig worker or platform worker shall make an application for registration in a prescribed format along with such documents including Aadhaar number as may be prescribed by the central government, and such worker shall be assigned a distinguishable number to his application. The system of electronic registration maintained by the appropriate government shall also provide for self-registration by any such worker in such manner as may be prescribed by the central government. A registered unorganized worker, gig worker or platform worker alone shall be eligible to avail the benefit of the concerned scheme framed under the Code on Social Security, 2020. The central government, or as the case may be, the state government shall make such contribution in a scheme as may be specified to that effect. Q. 21. Is any contribution mandatorily prescribed from the aggregators under the Code on Social Security, 2020? Ans. Yes. Sec 114. 4. Provides for the contribution to be collected from aggregators. As per the code, they will have to contribute 1 to 2% of their annual turnover for Social Security, which will not exceed 5% of the amount paid or payable by an aggregator to gig workers and platform workers. Rule 51. 3. Of the Code on Social Security, 2020 discusses on the nuances about the same. Q. 22. What are the functions of National and State Social Security Board under the Code on Social Security, 2020? Ans. The functions of the National Social Security Board are recommend to the central government for framing suitable schemes for different sections of unorganized workers, gig workers and platform workers. B. Advise the central government on such matters arising out of the administration of this code as may be referred to it. C. Monitor such social welfare schemes for unorganized workers, gig workers and platform workers as are administered by the central government. D. Review the record-keeping functions performed at the state level. E. Review the expenditure from the fund and account. And F. Undertake such other functions as are assigned to it by the central government from time to time. The state board does have similar functions at the state level. Q. 23. What are the functions of state building workers welfare boards under the Code on Social Security, 2020? Ans. The functions of state building workers welfare boards are to provide death and disability benefits to a beneficiary or his dependents. B. Make payment of pension to the beneficiaries who have completed the age of 60 years. C. Pay such amount in connection with premium for group insurance scheme of the beneficiaries as may be prescribed by the appropriate government. D. Frame educational schemes for the benefit of children of the beneficiaries as may be prescribed by the appropriate government. E. Meet such medical expenses for treatment of major ailments of a beneficiary or such dependent as may be prescribed by the appropriate government. F. Make payment of maternity benefits to the beneficiaries. G. Frame skill development and awareness schemes for the beneficiaries. H. Provide transit accommodation or hostel facility to the beneficiaries. I. Formulation of any other welfare scheme for the building worker beneficiaries by state government in concurrence with the central government. And J. Make provision and improvement of such other welfare measures and facilities as may be prescribed by the central government. Q. 24. What are the types of schemes to be notified by the central government under the Chapter 3 of the Code on Social Security, 2020? Ans. The central government may by notification frame a scheme to be called the Employees Provident Fund scheme, for which the Provident Fund shall be established under the Chapter 3, dealing with EPF, for employees or for any class of employees, and specify the establishments or class of establishments to which they said scheme shall apply. B. Frame a scheme to be called the Employees Pension Scheme for the purpose of providing for I. Superannuation pension, retiring pension or permanent total disablement pension to the employees of any establishment or class of establishments to which this chapter applies. 2. Widow or widower's pension, children pension or orphan pension payable to the beneficiaries of such employees. And 3. Nominee pension. C. Frame a scheme to be called the Employees Deposit Linked Insurance Scheme for the purpose of providing life insurance benefits to the employees of any establishment or class of establishments to which Chapter 3, dealing with EPF, applies. D. Frame any other scheme or schemes for the purposes of providing social security benefits under this code to self-employed workers or any other class of persons. Q. 25. Discuss on employer's liability as prescribed under the Code on Social Security, 2020, and employer is to maintain records and registers containing particulars such as number of days for which work performed by employees, number of hours of work performed by the employees, wage paid, leave wages, wages for overtime work and attendance, employee's identification number, by whatever nomenclature it may be called, number of dangerous occurrences, accidents, injuries in respect of which compensation has been paid by the employer and the amount of such compensation relating to Chapter 4 and Chapter 7, respectively. Statutory deductions made by employer from the wages of an employee in respect of Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. Details as to cess paid in respect of building and other construction work. Total number of employees, regular, contractual or fixed-term employment, on the day specified, persons recruited during a particular period. 11. Occupational details of the employees, and vacancies for which suitable candidates were not available during the specified period. The employer is mandated to display notices at the workplaces of the employees in such manner and form as may be prescribed by the appropriate government, issue wage slips to the employees, in electronic forms or otherwise, and file such return electronically or otherwise to such officer or authority in such manner and during such periods as may be prescribed by the appropriate government. 26. What is compounding of offenses under the Code on Social Security, 2020? What is the procedure involved? And Section 138 of the Code on Social Security, 2020 and corresponding Rule 56 gets applied here. 1. The officer authorized by the central government by notification for the purposes of compounding of offenses shall issue electronically a compounding notice in Form 24 for the offenses for which are compoundable under Section 138. 2. The person so noticed may apply in Part 3 of the Form 24 to the officer electronically and deposit the entire compounding amount by electronic transfer or otherwise, within 15 days of the receipt of the notice. 3. The compounding officer shall issue a composition certificate in Part IV of Form 24 within 10 days of receipt of the composition amount, to such person from whom such amount has been received in satisfaction of the composition notice. 4. If a person so noticed fails to deposit the composition amount within the prescribed time, the prosecution shall be instituted before the competent court or the offense in respect of which the compounding notice was issued, against such person. 5. Composition after institution of prosecution. The court may compound any compoundable offense at any time after filing of a complaint under Section 138 of the Code on Social Security, 2020. B. The provisions of Section 320 of the Code on Social Security, 2020 of Criminal Procedure, 1973 shall apply to such compositions. Q27. What is a career center under the Code on Social Security, 2020? And career centers will replace employment exchanges and it includes any office, including employment exchange, place or portal, established and maintained in the manner prescribed by the central government for providing such career services, including registration, collection and furnishing of information, either by the keeping of registers or otherwise, manually, digitally, virtually or through any other mode, as may be prescribed by the central government, which may, inter alia, relate generally or specifically to I. Persons who seek to employ employees. 2. Persons who seek employment. 3. Occurrence of vacancies. And IV. Persons who seek vocational guidance and career counseling or guidance to start self-employment. Q28. Is there any special power vested with the central government during times of pandemic or disaster? And yes. Section 144 of the Code on Social Security, 2020 details out the power of central government by order, defer or reduce employer's contribution, or employee's contribution, or both, payable under Chapter 3 or Chapter 4, as the case may be, for a period up to 3 months at a time, in respect of establishment to which Chapter 3 or Chapter 4, as the case may be, applies. for whole of India or part thereof in the event of pandemic, endemic or national disaster. This is applicable to EPF and DC contributions alone. Q29. What is Social Security Fund? ANS. The code mandates setting up of Social Security Fund both at central and state level. Section 141(1) of the Code on Social Security, 2020 describes that here shall be established by the central government a Social Security Fund for social security and welfare of the unorganized workers, gig workers and platform workers. The major source of the fund will be the amount collected by way of composition of offenses under the Code on Social Security, 2020 and any other sources as prescribed. 30. How is auditing of Social Security organizations prescribed under the Code on Social Security, 2020, and Section 116 of the Code on Social Security, 2020 details out the same. Accounts of each of the Social Security organizations is to be audited annually by the Controller and Auditor General of India, and any expenditure incurred by him in connection with such audit shall be payable by the respective Social Security organization to the Controller and Auditor General of India.
Industrial Relations Code, 2020 FAQs on Industrial Relations Code, 2020 Q1. How many existing acts does the Industrial Relations Code, 2020 consolidate, and which are those acts? ANS. The Industrial Code, 2020 consolidates 3 acts, namely, the Trade Union Act 1926, the Industrial Employment Standing Orders, Act 1946, and the Industrial Disputes Act 1947. Q2. Which chapter of the Industrial Code, 2020 relates to the matters pertaining to trade unions? ANS. Chapter 3 of the Industrial Code, 2020. Q3. Which chapter of the Industrial Code, 2020 relates to the matters pertaining to the standing orders? ANS. Chapter 4 of the Industrial Code, 2020. Q4. Total how many schedules does the Industrial Relations Code, 2020 have, and what are those? ANS. 3 schedules, the first schedule concerning the matters to be providing in standing orders under the code, the second schedule concerning the unfair labor practices, and the third schedule concerning conditions of service for change of which notice is to be given. Q5. What is the new term in the Industrial Code, 2020 for the term workman as defined and used in Section 2(s) of the Industrial Dispute Act 1947? ANS. The new term for the term workman as defined and used in Section 2(s) of the Industrial Dispute Act 1947, under the Industrial Code, 2020 is worker. Q6. Whether the definition of industry under the Industrial Relations Code, 2020 inter alia, include institutions owned or management by organizations substantially engaged in any charitable, social, or philanthropic services. ANS. No. Q7. Whether as per the Industrial Code, 2020 termination of the services of a worker as a result of tenure of fixed-term employment, or termination of the service of a worker on the ground of continued ill health fall within the scope of the definition of retrenchment as defined under Section 2(zh) of the Code? ANS. No, as both the situations have been excluded from the scope of the definition of retrenchment. Q8. What are the bipartite forums provided under the Industrial Code, 2020 for the purpose of securing and preserving amity and harmonious industrial relations between the employer and workers in industrial establishments and resolution of disputes arising out of individual grievances? ANS. The bipartite forums provided under the Industrial Code, 2020 for the purpose of securing and preserving amity and harmonious industrial relations between the employer and workers in industrial establishment and resolution of disputes arising out of individual grievances include Works Committee and Grievance Redressal Committee. Q9. What is the requirement in terms of minimum number of workers for the purpose of constitution of Works Committee and Grievance Redressal Committee? ANS. 100 workers for the purpose of constitution of Works Committee and 20 workers for the purpose of constitution of Grievance Redressal Committee. Q10. As per the Industrial Relations Code, 2020 concerted casual leave on a given day, by what percentage, or workers employed in industry, would be deemed as strike? ANS 50% or more. Q11. The maximum no of members in the Grievance Redressal Committee, GRC, which under the Industrial Disputes Act 1947, at present is 6, has been increased to how many members in the Industrial Relations Code, 2020? ANS 10 members. Q12. As per the Industrial Relations Code, 2020, the trade union having support of what percentage, or more of the workers on the muster roll in an industrial establishment will be recognized as sole negotiation union. ANS. The trade union having 51% or more workers on the muster roll in an industrial establishment. Q13. What is the minimum support requirement in terms of percentage of workers for the representatives to be part of the negotiating council in an establishment having more than one trade union? In the absence of no union having 51% or more workers in its support, ANS 20% of the total workers on the muster roll of the establishment. Q14. The newly introduced provision of Worker Reskilling Fund in the Industrials Code, 2020 provides for contribution of an amount equal to how many days of wages, or such other days as may be notified by the central gov by the establishment to such fund in respect of every retrenched worker. ANS. An amount equal to 15 days of wages, or such other days as may be notified by the central gov. Q15. What is the prescribed number of members under the Industrial Relations Code, 2020 for Constitution of Industrial Tribunal? ANS. 2 members consisting of 1 judicial member and 1 member from the administrative side. Q16. Under the Industrial Relations Code, 2020 the power to impose penalty for offenses punishable exclusively with fine has been given to the officers, not below which rank of to Gov of India, or an officer of the equivalent rank in the state Gov appointed by the appropriate Gov. ANS. Under Secretary. Q17. Is it true that under the Industrial Relations Code, 2020 the disputes pertaining the registered trade unions have also been included within the jurisdiction of Industrial Tribunal? ANS. Yes. Q18. Whether as per the Industrial Relations Code, 2020 an employee worker engaged on fixed-term employment contract would also be entitled to get retrenchment compensation in addition to various terminal dues. ANS. No. Q19. As per the Industrial Relations Code, 2020 any offense falling under the category of compoundable offense can be compounded for a sum of what percent of the fine prescribed for that offense? ANS 50% of the maximum fine, in case of offenses punishable, only with fine, and 75% of the maximum fine in case of the offenses punishable, with fine, or imprisonment up to 1 year. Q20. Whether a person who has been convicted by a court in India for any offense involving moral turpitude and sentenced to imprisonment is eligible for being a member of the executive or any other office, bearer of a registered trade union immediately after his release. ANS. No. Section 21 of the Industrial Relations Code, 2020 concerning disqualification of office bearers of trade unions clearly provide that a person shall be disqualified for being chosen as, and for being a member of the executive or any other office, bearer of a registered trade union if he has been convicted by a court in India for any offense involving moral turpitude and sentenced to imprisonment, unless a period of 5 years has elapsed since his release.
The Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions, OSH and WC, Code, 2020 FAQs on the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions, OSH and WC, Code, 2020 Q1 How many central labor laws have been subsumed under the Code on OSH and WC 2020? ANS total 13 central labor laws have been subsumed under the Code on OSH and WC 2020. Q2 Whether OSH and WC Code 2020 will apply on offices of central and state gov. ANS the Code on OSH and WC 2020 will not apply on central and state gov offices, but will apply on contract labor employed through contractor in the premises. Q3 Whether regularly employed employee of a contractor will be considered as contract labor. ANS regularly employed employee of a contractor will not be considered as contract labor if he is employed on mutually agreed term, with periodical increment and statutory benefits. Q4 What is core activity? ANS it is the activity for which establishment has been set up, and which is necessary and essential for the establishment. Q5 Whether contract labor can be deployed on core activities. ANS ordinarily contract labor will not be deployed on core activities. Q6 What is the threshold for number of contract laborers for an establishment for obtaining license under the OSH and WC Code 2020? ANS establishments employing 50 or more contract laborers will require to obtain license under the OSH and WC Code 2020. Q7 What is the requirement of registration under the OSH and WC Code 2020? ANS establishment employing 10 or more employees need to be registered under the code. Q8 who will be responsible for providing safety, health and welfare facilities to contract laborers. AN's principal employer will be responsible to ensure safety, health and welfare provisions to contract laborers. Q9 what is the body prescribed under the Code for Advising Central Gov on Administration of the OSH and WC Code, 2020. AN's National Occupational Safety and Health Advisory Board have been prescribed under the Code to advise Central Gov in framing rules, regulations etc. Q10 what is threshold for number of workers for constituting safety committee in an establishment under OSH and WC Code, 2020. AN's establishment employing 500 or more workers has to form safety committee consisting of representatives of management and workers. Q11 what is threshold for wage ceiling for interstate migrant workers under the Code. AN's interstate migrant worker getting wages up to Rs 18,000 per month will be covered under the OSH and WC Code, 2020. Q12 what additional benefits have been prescribed to a migrant worker under the OSH and WC Code, 2020. AN's employer has to provide journey allowance once in a year for traveling to and fro native village, portability of public distribution system, and for migrant worker in construction work, portability of BOCW cess fund. Q13 what is threshold for number of workers for providing canteen in an establishment as per the provisions of OSH and WC Code, 2020. AN's establishment employing 100 or more workers including contract laborers has to provide canteen facilities. Q14 what is the provision regarding creche facilities under the OSH and WC Code, 2020? AN's establishment employing 50 or more workers has to provide creche facility for the children of employees. Q15 what is provision in respect of formalization of employment under the OSH and WC Code, 2020. AN's every employer of an establishment has to issue appointment letter to each and every employee employed by him. Q16 what is the employer's liability towards health examination of employees as per the provisions of OSH and WC Code, 2020. AN's every employer has to provide facilities for annual health checkup free of cost for the employees of prescribed age. Q17 what are prescribed daily and weekly hours of work under the OSH and WC Code, 2020? AN's the prescribed daily and weekly hours of work under the OSH and WC Code, 2020 are 8 hours a day and 48 hours a week respectively. Q18 what is the minimum criterion in terms of number of days for a worker to be eligible for annual leave with wages as per the provisions of OSH and WC Code, 2020. AN's a worker should have worked for 180 or more days in a calendar year to be eligible for annual leave with wages. Q19 can a worker be deployed on overtime work without his/her consent as per the provisions of OSH and WC Code, 2020. AN's no consent of a worker is necessary before deploying him/her on overtime work. Q20 can a woman employee be deployed on night shift as per the provisions of OSH and WC Code, 2020? AN's yes, a woman employee can be deployed on night shift before 6 a.m. and after 7 p.m. after obtaining her consent and subject to her safety, health, and suitable working conditions.
This conversation is powered by Google Illuminate. Check out illuminate.google.com for more. Welcome to the discussion. Today we're diving into a fascinating paper from the V.V. Giri National Labor Institute exploring the semiotics of women in advertisements. It's a complex topic with significant implications.
Absolutely. The way women are portrayed in advertising is far from neutral. It shapes perceptions and reinforces societal norms. A semiotic analysis helps uncover the hidden messages.
And those hidden messages can be quite powerful, influencing consumer behavior and even self-image. What are some of the key things this analysis reveals?
The paper doesn't directly analyze advertisements, but it does highlight the significant disparity in the portrayal of women in the workforce, which is directly relevant to how they are marketed to.
That's a crucial point. The representation of women in the workplace often bleeds into how they're depicted in advertising. Let's explore that connection. The paper starts by presenting some stark statistics on the Indian workforce. A significant portion is in the informal sector, and female participation rates are notably lower. What does this tell us?
It reveals a deep-seated inequality. The informal sector often lacks the protections and benefits of formal employment, disproportionately affecting women. This economic vulnerability influences how they are perceived and targeted in advertising.
So the economic realities shape the advertising landscape. How does this play out in the types of products or services marketed to women?
Often, women in the informal sector are targeted with products emphasizing domesticity or low-cost solutions, reinforcing existing societal roles and limiting aspirations.
The paper then delves into the rationale for Social Security reform in India. What are the key arguments presented?
The existing system is fragmented, with limited coverage, particularly for informal workers. There's a need for universal Social Security, bridging the gap between formal and informal sectors. This is crucial for women's economic empowerment.
And how does this relate to the semiotic analysis of advertisements? A lack of Social Security might influence how women are portrayed, right?
Precisely. Economic insecurity can lead to advertising that reinforces traditional roles, focusing on immediate needs rather than long-term aspirations. It's a vicious cycle.
The discussion then moves to the Code on Social Security 2020. What are its main goals and provisions?
The code aims to consolidate and rationalize existing labor laws, extending Social Security to a wider range of workers, including those in the informal sector, gig workers, and platform workers. This is a significant step towards inclusivity.
Does the code address the specific challenges faced by women in the informal sector?
It attempts to by broadening coverage. However, the effectiveness will depend on implementation and addressing underlying societal biases. The advertising landscape will likely reflect the success of these efforts.
Let's look at some specific provisions of the code. It covers areas like employees' provident funds, maternity benefits, and employee compensation. What are the key features?
The code standardizes contributions, benefits, and eligibility criteria across different sectors. It also introduces provisions for unorganized workers, gig workers, and platform workers, a significant step towards universal coverage. Maternity benefits are strengthened, which is crucial for women's well-being.
How does the code's emphasis on digitization and record-keeping potentially impact the portrayal of women in advertising?
Improved data collection can help identify and address gender disparities in employment and Social Security access. This data-driven approach can inform more inclusive and equitable advertising practices.
The paper also discusses the applicability of different schemes under the code, highlighting thresholds and potential challenges in implementation. What are some of these hurdles?
Reaching and registering workers in the informal sector, particularly women, remains a significant challenge. Awareness of the schemes and access to benefits are crucial. Enforcement is also key.
And how might these implementation challenges influence the advertising strategies targeting women?
If the code's benefits aren't effectively communicated and accessed, advertising might continue to rely on existing stereotypes, perpetuating the cycle of inequality.
The code establishes national and state-level boards to oversee implementation. What roles do these bodies play?
These boards are crucial for policy formulation, monitoring, and ensuring effective implementation of the Social Security schemes. Their success in addressing gender disparities will be vital.
How can these boards contribute to a more nuanced and representative portrayal of women in advertising?
By actively promoting gender equality in their policies and programs, these boards can create a more level playing field, influencing the advertising industry to reflect this change.
The code also includes stringent penalties for non-compliance. Why is this important?
Strong enforcement is essential to ensure that employers comply with the provisions of the code, protecting workers' rights and promoting equitable treatment. This is particularly important for women who are often vulnerable to exploitation.
How does the threat of penalties potentially influence advertising practices?
The fear of penalties can incentivize employers to create a more inclusive workplace, which in turn can lead to more representative advertising that reflects the diversity of their workforce.
A significant portion of the paper focuses on the challenges of providing Social Security to unorganized workers, including gig and platform workers. What are the key issues?
The sheer number of unorganized workers, coupled with their dispersed nature and lack of formal employment contracts, makes it difficult to reach them with Social Security benefits. Women are often overrepresented in this vulnerable group.
How does the creation of a Social Security fund address these challenges?
The fund provides a dedicated source of funding for Social Security schemes targeting unorganized workers. However, effective outreach and registration mechanisms are crucial for its success.
The paper also touches upon labor reforms under the Aplanebur Partabhen. How do these reforms complement the Social Security Code?
These reforms aim to formalize the workforce, improve working conditions, and extend Social Security coverage. They are complementary to the code, aiming to create a more inclusive and equitable labor market.
How might these broader reforms influence the portrayal of women in advertising?
By promoting formalization and improving working conditions, these reforms can create a more empowered workforce, leading to advertising that reflects the changing realities and aspirations of women.
Let's summarize some key highlights of the Social Security Code. It widens coverage, introduces uniform definitions, and emphasizes a consultative approach. What's the significance of these features?
Widening coverage is crucial for inclusivity. Uniform definitions ensure consistency and fairness. A consultative approach promotes collaboration and effective implementation. These features are vital for addressing gender disparities.
And what about the code's emphasis on digitization and stringent penalties?
Digitization streamlines processes and improves transparency. Stringent penalties deter non-compliance, protecting workers' rights. Both are essential for effective implementation and achieving the code's goals.
Let's bring it back to the paper's title, reading Images of Women in Advertisements, a Semiotic Analysis. How does the Social Security Code potentially impact the portrayal of women in advertising?
The code's success in extending Social Security to a wider range of workers, particularly women in the informal sector, will directly influence how they are perceived and targeted in advertising. More equitable economic conditions can lead to more diverse and empowering representations.
What are some of the key takeaways for advertisers and policymakers?
Advertisers need to be mindful of the societal messages they convey and avoid perpetuating harmful stereotypes. Policymakers need to ensure effective implementation of the code, addressing challenges in outreach and registration, particularly for women in the informal sector. Data-driven insights are crucial for both.
And finally, what are the long-term implications of this work? That was a great discussion. Thank you for your insights.